It was back in early November 1993. For those that can, I'll give you a minute to get back to that time, and I know there's plenty that can't go back to that time. But it was at that time, my wife and I were in a class. It was Tuesday night, about 50 of us, and actually we were finishing our diaconate. We were preparing, ordination was just a couple of months away, and we were trying to get those last classes done with. And as class began, the vicar for the deacons, Father Ed, came in, and just as class began, he said, "I want your attention for a moment." So we kind of figured he was just going to talk about what was coming up. And he said, "I have an announcement to make. Cardinal Bernardine has been charged with an inappropriate act with a young seminarian many years ago, and he's facing a $10 million lawsuit. So with that news, he has removed himself from office, and now Bishop Ray Geddert will be running the Archdiocese. We ask that you please keep the Archdiocese and Cardinal Bernardine in your prayers." Well, accusations like this did not come around that often in the early 90s, especially in the Archdiocese of Chicago. We were in disbelief. We weren't sure what to think. Of all people, Cardinal Bernardine. And he was a well-respected man of the church. He was a man of peace. And of course, it didn't make sense to anyone. Well, as the weeks went on, of course, the newspapers were filled, of course, the radio and the television, they were filled with commentaries and opinions and stories. But through it all, he said a few words, but he continued to be a man of trust, of hope, and of faith in God. Sure enough, 100 days later, actually it was 25 years ago this week, the person that accused him recanted the whole story, dropped all the charges, and dropped the lawsuit. No questions asked. I share that story today, not because of what's going on in the church, but really because the gospel message comes at the conclusion of that story. Be merciful as your Father is merciful. When it got over, Cardinal Bernardine said, "There's only one thing I want. I want to meet privately with this man who accused me." He didn't go out for revenge. He didn't go out on a "I told you so" tour. He didn't want a public apology. He just wanted that one thing, to meet with the man and to find out, first, what hurt him so much that he would have brought this accusation, and secondly, face to face, to forgive him. Well, sure enough, it took conversations and negotiating and planning. But that day finally came, and he met with him privately on December 30th, 1974, that following year, which was just a little over a year after that accusation. Think about it. Who of us could respond that same way? We hope that we could. And imagine if you've been a victim of a crime or a victim of a hurtful act. It's more likely we would want some form of revenge or public apology, or maybe just separation from it all. But through it, Cardinal Bernardine kept that trust, that hope, and that deep faith in God. For me, he has always been an example of today's specific gospel. In his book, The Gift of Peace, he offers some very heartfelt thoughts and doubts and even his inadequacies during this challenging time of his life. Be merciful as your Father is merciful. So I want you to think about this for a minute. If you went to someone that you interacted with almost every day, maybe somebody from work or school or your friends or even at home, and you said to them, give me 3 words, only 3 words that described you. What kind of words would they be? Would you hear compassionate, sincere, fair, merciful? Or maybe you'd hear words like directed, intense, passionate, targeted. I remember many, many years back, I was in a meeting and one of my vice presidents looked at me and said, Jim, you're very passionate about this topic. And I kind of thought that was a compliment until I found out it was a polite way of saying, you're very assertive. When you end a conversation and you walk away and you're feeling a little down, a little apprehensive, or kind of spiritless, is it maybe because we didn't have the trust or the hope or the faith of that person that we were with, and we let our humanness go to the side to be a little bit more directive or superior in that conversation? It happens to us all the time. And we're not alone, because even the world speaks to that. Justice. Seek your justice. Get what's coming to you. Today, Jesus said, no. It's not about you. It's about the other person. Be merciful as your Father is merciful. Let's face it, no matter what age we are, from the littlest to the oldest, every day we have opportunities to be more open, to be less judgmental, to be less challenging in our everyday encounters. It's kind of like the law of echo. If you stand in an echo chamber and shout, that shout's going to come back at you even louder. If you stand in an echo chamber and curse, that curse is going to come back to you even louder. And if you stand in that echo chamber and sing, that song is going to come back to you even louder. Today, Jesus is asking us to stand in that echo chamber and sing, and to let our trust and our hope and our faith help us be merciful as our Father is merciful.